This is a follow up video after our last one where we discuss how evolution can be consolidated or combined with a 7 day creation without having to change either. One of the points that came up quite a bit in the follow up discussions, not so much on YouTube, but on the various forums I posted the video on, was how can God be good and all powerful and still allow bad things happen to seemingly good people? You can name up any number of examples, but this is basically, answers pretty much all of it. And the first thing that we got to learn is what is exactly meant by love and what is God actually offering. Love, as we defined it, encompasses a little bit of all of these different attributes, but as the Greeks defined it, and the reason we're going by the Greek example is because that is the word, or that's how the Bible was written. And when we translate the word love, we mean one of these four things. Love was subdivided. Okay, so you have Philly or brotherly type of love. It's a platonic band of brothers type of love. You have Eros, which is a passionate, physical, erotic love. Storge, which is the love between parent and child. It's very protective. Most people would assume God is offering this type of love, which kind of is the reason for the question, why do bad things happen to good people if God is all loving? The love, again, being offered here is not Storge, it's agape. Agape is the godly type of love that endures. It's for those whose purpose is focused on eternity. The idea being, my love for you is going to endure hardship and heartache and trials and tribulations here now, so that eternally you become a more complete or a better person. Like it says here, it allows pain in the here and now. It will even introduce pain in the here and now, so that later you can be more complete. That sounds counterintuitive, but older generations understand this. When it's like the axiom, the old cliche, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. The idea here being, if you don't use the rod, if you spare it, if you keep the rod from the child, if you don't physically discipline the child, cause him pain here and now, you will spoil him or make him rotten, bad, no good in the future. Meaning, if you don't introduce pain now, in the future, he will be no good. So older generations understand this, even though if we can't understand it now. The other thing that we have to understand here is God's love is not boundless. The Bible never says God is omnibenevolent, meaning all loving. In fact, there is a short list of those in whom God is reported to hate. It's not a very long list, but there is a short list of people who God hate. God's love, believe it or not, is conditional, and that condition can be found here in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believes shall not perish but have everlasting life. What is in the blue here is where people get the idea that God's love is unconditional, that God so loved the world. But the condition here in the purple outlines that love is only reserved for those who believe. Okay, for those who believe shall not perish. And then again, the type of love that people assume that God gives is the Storge type that just will do anything to ensure an easy and careful life. But again, here, God's love, in John 3:16 at least, is being identified as only allowing for eternal life. It doesn't necessarily say that you'll have an easy or carefree life here in this time and age. It is saying that the love that God, the agape that God is offering, is going to yield eternal life, not an easy life. Okay, so to review this first part here, we're actually identifying what it is contextually that God is offering in the way of love. First, we define love, the four attributes of love in the Greek. Again, our one English word, love, translates into these four words in the Greek. And out of those four words, God offers agape. Okay? Again, he doesn't offer universal love as we define the word love. God offers agape, and agape allows for pain. It allows it's a smart love. It's not an emotional type. It plans and helps the person long term, not short. And then here again in John 3:16, we find out what exactly God is offering. God does agape the world so much that he gave everyone an opportunity to experience this agape. And then it's only through belief in Jesus that we may be given God's agape. And then agape is not storge or philia. It is God's concern is not for your ease of life, free from trials and tribulations. God's love is focused on your eternal life and not comfort now. So that's the first half of what it is that God's love, what it means to be loved here by God. The second part is, the second question we get is then, why is there so much evil in the world? The primary reason is this world or this realm is not under God's direct authority. Yes, God did create the world, but he gave it to us and we handed it over to Satan for knowledge of good and evil. This was represented by evil being introduced by one man and then in the garden. Okay. Here's a list of Bible verses that identify that this realm belongs to Satan. Okay, let's see. These are the verses that show that Satan rules this realm. The whole book of Job is dedicated. It starts out with God asking Satan what he's up to. Satan replies, wandering the earth, going from place to place. Then God asks Satan, have you considered or seen my servant Job? And then ongoing through the discussion, God allows Satan to do whatever he wants. Now people take this and say, well, God's evil for allowing Satan to do his thing. But, God didn't tell Satan he had to treat Job harshly. He could have done anything to Job. He could have offered him more than what God offered him. He could have had a better life through Satan than through God. But Satan decides to do what Satan does. And that's evident throughout this world. And that's to try and drive a wedge between his God and his people through heartache, shame, and heartbreak. Satan is the ruler of hell, is an idea that came from the Greeks and the Romans mythology. That's something that's been assimilated by the church. In fact, Satan is the master of this world and everything in it. When God cast Satan out, him and his angels, when they had to follow him out, they didn't go to hell. They went here, and they remain here. They're here now among us. Okay, hell is for Satan. Hell burns eternally for Satan and a handful of his inner circle. But right now, Satan is the master of this realm. And then here come the verses in Matthew 4 and Luke 4. These are the temptations of Christ, and Christ is tempted when the devil shows him all the kingdoms of man, and he said, if you bow to me, he will turn them over to Christ. Now remember, God's way of doing this was have Christ hang on a cross. Satan is offering Christ the same rule of man, but through him if he bows to Satan. So Satan couldn't offer this if he didn't own it. And then we have Ephesians 2, 2 Ephesians, or Ephesians 2, 1 through 3, and then 6, 12 through 13, Peter 5, Revelations 12, James 4, James 4, 7, 1 John 2, 18 and 19. All of these point to Satan's dominion over this world. Just one of these verses is enough to establish Satan the ruler of this realm. But why do we have so many? It's a constant reminder as to why this world is so full of evil. I kind of liken the whole thing unto a sharecropper. Yeah, God is like the landowner, and Satan is the farmer. God allows Satan to put a farm on his land, and everything that Satan grows, everything that Satan produces, everything that the land yields belongs to Satan. But God gets an opportunity as a sharecropper to take the first fruits. And he does this through Christ, meaning he allows anyone that wants to be a part of his network, God's network, the opportunity to get away from Satan. That's what this love is. That's what God is offering, is to get out of the certain death that Satan's offering, is to not be sold to the slaughterhouse, because that's what Satan does as a farmer here. He raises geese, he raises pigs to have them slaughtered. God is offering a way out of that. That is his love. That is the extent of what he's offering right here, right now. Yes, we do have opportunity to petition God for greater things, to become greater servants, but that's what we are, though. We're servants. We're not children yet, so we don't get to have that stored. We don't have the assurances of the full protection of God, because God allowed Satan to have full reign or full access to his son. He didn't spare his son anything from Satan. He's not going to spare us. So if you wonder why this world is so full of evil, it's because the bottom line is Satan runs it. This is his farm. You don't like to slaughter? Talk to the farmer. Don't talk to the landowner. The landowner, yes, allows Satan to run a farm, but it's a farm. And that's the nature of the farm business. So why do bad things happen to good people if God is all-loving, all-knowing, and all-powerful? Well, the short answer is that the love God offers does not include protection from bad things. 2, the love that God does offer is for specifically eternal life. And that love will allow or introduce pain, if necessary, as a way to preserve or ensure eternal life. So why is there so much evil in the world? Because it's Satan's world. It's Satan's farm. He gets to choose the livestock. He gets to choose what gets planted. He gets to choose what gets reaped, when it gets reaped, when it gets cold, or when it goes to a market for slaughter. That's pretty much it. Yeah, God is the landowner. God does have a final say in what Satan can do. There are limits per the book of Job. You can also see the limitations that he put on Satan, when he was being tempted. He told basically where to go. He does have final say. I think that's one of the reasons things aren't worse. Believe it or not, the Bible does describe a time where things were way worse, to the point where God had enough and sent a flood. But that's a subject for another time. If you have any other questions, you can list them out in the comments below for me, and or on one of the forums, and I'll be happy to address them there. God bless. Have a good day, and thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate having a format and an audience to talk to about these things.